We are live. There we go. Well, good afternoon, folks. We'll begin with the land acknowledgement for today's meeting, and that's the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Agenda item number 2 is approval of minutes. Are there any errors or omissions people have noted? None so being, I'm calling for a motion to approve the minutes.
Move to circulated.
Thank you, Councillor. A seconder?
Tyler, and I'll second.
Thanks, Tyler. To the question, all in favor? Accepting the minutes as presented. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, there's some feedback coming in on the line. I'm not sure if anyone else is hearing that.
Yeah, I just got it at the last second or two. One of the presenters was having problems with their mic earlier. We thought that was rectified. Sort of a buzz. So maybe that's still happening. Number 3, approval of the order of business, approval of additions or deletions. Simon, are there any additions or deletions to this agenda?
Thank you, Chair. The clerk's office has not received any requests for additions or deletions for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Does a member of the committee wish to move items? None so being, I'm calling for a motion to approve the order of business. Do we have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor. And a seconder?
And second.
Thanks, Tyler. I'll call the question. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried.
I think it's possible, just to speak to the feedback. I think our member Azuka, if you're able to just check your microphone settings if it's plugged in correctly, or if you're using a microphone but have access to another one, just if you're able to see if there's a possible way to remedy your microphone. We can also, if you would like, send me an email and I can reach out to IT and maybe they can provide you some assistance.
I'll leave that with him. There's a call for declaration of conflicts of interests. Are there any committee members who have conflicts of interest and wish to declare them at this time? None so being, we'll move on. There's nothing on deferred business. Item 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Has there any correspondence been received by the clerk's office, Simon?
Thank you, Chair. The clerk's office has not received any correspondence to be circulated with this meeting agenda.
Do any committee members have petitions they wish to bring forward? None so being, move forward. Our presentation 3.7 doesn't exist. Information brought forward, none. Item 9, reports and discussion staff. Case 24505, development agreement for 10 Kirk Road, Halifax, for a bare land condominium development and rehabilitation of a registered heritage property. And staff member Elizabeth Cushing will be doing the presentation. Elizabeth?
Great, thank you, Chair. All right, so just confirming that everyone can hear me all right and you can see the presentation.
Good.
Perfect. So good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Cushing and I'm a heritage planner with Planning and Development. I'll be presenting case 24505, application for a development agreement on a registered heritage property at 10 Kirk Road in Halifax. An application was submitted by McKay Lyons Sweet Apple Architects on behalf of the property owner requesting to enter into a heritage development agreement on the lands at 10 Kirk Road to permit a 15-unit bare land condominium on a registered heritage property. The 3.75-acre property is located on the north side of Kirk Road off Purcell's Cove Road. It's bound by Park Hill Road, McManus Road, and the Northwest Arm. The Heritage Advisory Committee reviewed and provided a positive recommendation on the substantial alteration application for the registered heritage property at their July 26, 2023 meeting, and Regional Council subsequently approved the alterations on August 22nd, 2023. And these alterations included the removal of the existing annex addition, which was built circa 1965, and the restoration of the south elevation based on the original architectural blueprints from 1914, retention and rehabilitation of the gabled dormers and bay window on the west elevation, replacement in kind of doors and windows, alteration of the property to include 14 residential building sites, additional driveway circulation, and a shared guest parking area, alterations to the concrete swimming pool to meet building code, preservation and repairs of the stone walls, and rehabilitation of the naturalized areas on the property. 10 Kirk Road was added to the Registry of Heritage Property for Halifax Regional Municipality in 2010. The heritage value is largely derived from the principal dwelling designed in the arts and crafts style in 1914 by well-known architect William Brown for eye surgeon Dr. R.E. Mathers, who retained ownership of the property until 1944. The surrounding property elements attributed to Dr. Mather's tenure on the property include the roost outbuilding, stone walls, rhododendron garden, in-ground pool, and hemlock tree stand. The property did have an approved development agreement from 2011 that lapsed, and there's also now a change in property ownership. So during this time, the structures on the property were unoccupied. The current property owners have applied to enter into a new development agreement. The previous approved development agreement was also for a bare land condominium. However, it proposed to keep the annex addition and turn the primary dwelling into 2 separate residential units. So in addition to the principal dwelling, 12 building sites were approved. The proposal in front of you today is quite similar, but it proposes 1 unit within the primary dwelling and 14 additional building sites. A full comparison between the two can be found in the staff report. The proposal is for a bare lands condominium with 15 single unit residences. Again, the rehabilitated primary dwelling will contain 1 unit, and there will be 14 single unit building sites which will contain new construction. The roost outbuilding, rhododendron garden, stone walls, hemlock tree stand, and the in-ground concrete pool will be retained and rehabilitated. There are 2 access points at Kirk Road and McManus Road, and there are 5 guest parking spaces that are proposed to be accessible from McManus Road in addition to the individual home site parking. As mentioned, the 14 home sites will contain new construction with a maximum height of 10.7 meters, which is within the permitted height of the R1 zone. The new construction has been designed to be compatible with, subordinate to, and distinguishable from the existing primary dwelling through its design and materiality. Traditional building materials are proposed for the historic-inspired designs of cottage and arts and crafts style, while contrasting materials are proposed for farmhouse, modern, and coastal designs. The materials reference the heritage resources and materials on site, such as the dark finished wood shingles, granite stone, and an emphasis on masonry. So as mentioned, the conservation efforts as part of this proposal include the removal of the annex addition circa 1965 and restoration of the south elevation based on the original 1914 blueprints, which you can see on the slide here. It's also the retention and rehabilitation of the gable dormers and bay window, replacement in kind of doors and windows, and preservation and repairs as needed of the concrete pool and stone walls, and rehabilitation of the rhododendron garden and hemlock tree stand. The property is designated low-density residential in the Halifax Municipal Planning Strategy, which permits single-unit dwellings, row houses, and auxiliary dwelling units. The property is zoned R1 single family, which permits limited residential uses. The zone has a maximum height of 10.7 meters and a lot frontage minimum of 15.24 meters. This development agreement is being sought in accordance with Policy 6.8 of the Halifax Municipal Planning Strategy, which permits Council to consider a development agreement on any lot containing a registered heritage building for any development or change in use that's not otherwise permitted by the land use designation and zone. So in this case, we are looking at a similar height, but the lot frontage minimums would be a variant. A staff evaluation for the proposal against the standards and guidelines for the Historic Places of Canada can be found in Attachment C of the report. The proposal retains and rehabilitates the character-defining elements of the arts and crafts style dwelling, along with significant landscape features. The primary dwelling has a building footprint of 286.5 square meters, while the new construction will have a maximum footprint of 232 square meters, thus will be smaller to not detract from the primary dwelling. New construction will not impact the essential form and integrity of the primary dwelling and landscape features, and the prominent views of the northwest arm from and to the primary dwelling will be retained. As many landscape features will be retained, there will be minimal visual and physical impact to the surrounding streets, and it will use the existing access points of Kirk Road and McManus Road. Based on the site layout, the conservation of character-defining elements and other elements that add heritage value, and the complementary design of the new construction, the proposed development satisfies standards 1 through 12. A public mailout was sent to property owners within the notification area on February 23rd, 2023. Staff received 20 written submissions from residents. Members of the public expressed concerns such as emergency access, parking, traffic, construction and noise generation, increased density, and tree retention. So the traffic impact study completed for this proposal did not identify any major issues. However, as due diligence, HRM did remove on-street parking from the surrounding streets. Each home site will have their own paved driveway and garage, and there, as mentioned, there are 5 additional guest parking spaces which will be available. Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency have been consulted throughout the application process, and the site plan was revised to accommodate a 9-meter access route within the proposed development. Halifax Water and Nova Scotia Power have also been engaged in the review process and did not have any concerns. An arborist report and a tree protection plan will be required as it proceeds to the construction phase, and the applicant will also be required to meet all relevant policies pertaining to construction noise and circulation in their construction mitigation plan. We are currently at the HAC review stage of the Heritage Development Agreement process. Should HAC provide a positive recommendation, the application will proceed to first reading by Halifax and West Community Council, followed by a public hearing. The following recommendations before the committee for their consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I had to get my microphone back on. Thank you, Elizabeth. So the recommendations just disappeared from my screen. That's okay. We will need a motion for this.
Mr. Chairman, I can put it on for you.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Let it be moved that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that Halifax and West Community Council, 1, give notice to consider the proposed development agreement as set out in attachment A to the staff report dated September 4th, 2024 to enable the construction of a 15 single-unit residence at the Bearland condominium on the registered heritage property located at 10 Kirk Road and schedule public hearing. 2, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially in the same form as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated September 4th, 2024. And 3, require the agreement to be signed by the property owner within 120 days or any extension thereof granted by council, and the request of the property owner from the date of the final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void, and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for this?
Tyler here and I'll second.
Oh, thanks, Tyler. Any discussion on the motion?
My only question is regards to the Bearland condominium being set up with the various zoning and opportunity it has for all the dwellings. I anticipate some of these are going to be short-term rentals. So there's a requirement now for any of these tourist accommodations to be registered. So I don't know if there's any clauses in the agreement that requires them to make a notification to the Bearland condominium that these units will be registered as possible short-term tourist accommodations.
Through the chair to the councillor, I don't think that was something that we had considered previously, and that's something that we could look to incorporate within the proposed development agreement. I know that we did include a clause related to backyard suites to ensure that we are sticking to the existing proposed site plan.
Backyard suites were allowed, the actual dwelling units, but I'm just curious, that this be a prime opportunity for short-term rentals? And I think there's an obligation, or hopefully that these tourist accommodations are duly registered and the Bearland Condominium Corporation duly notified.
Yeah, through the chair of the council, we'll definitely make sure to consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion on this motion? Elizabeth? None so being, I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None so being, motion carried. Item 9.1.2, Heritage Development Agreement for 173-175 St. Margaret's Bay Road. And I don't know yet who the staff member is who will be presenting this.
That'll be me.
Carter, of course. Yeah. Okay, would you please go forward?
Thank you. So good afternoon to the chair and committee members. My name is Carter Beaupre McVie, Planner 3 Heritage, and staff are pleased to present to you today Plan App 2023-00396, the application for a heritage development agreement at 173-175 St. Margaret's Bay Road in Halifax. This is an application by ZAP Consulting on behalf of the property owner to enter into a heritage development agreement permitting 3 townhouse units, 1 duplex, and 1 backyard suite, as well as the rehabilitation of the surrounding landscape on the registered heritage property known as the Craigmore, in addition to retaining the historic building. Here is a look at the site in question. It fronts on St. Margaret's Bay Road near the entrance to the Armdale Rotary. And
Can't
it
see your presentation.
Sorry, I think, yeah, you're having some difficulty possibly
Yeah.
just sharing your presentation screen.
Oh, my
Is
apologies.
that showing, Carter? Yeah.
Let's try that again. How about now?
Yep,
Not
looking good
yet.
now.
Oh, there it is.
Great. My apologies for that. So here's a look at the site in question. It fronts on St. Margaret's Bay Road near the entrance to the Armdale Rotary, and it backs onto Finch Lane. Also provided is a photo of the Heritage Building, which is located towards the eastern side of the property. The Craigmore was registered in 2008, and the heritage value of this property is embodied in the property's in the 1.5-story arts and crafts cottage-style dwelling, which was constructed circa 1909 by an unknown builder. It was first occupied by Margaret and Angus D. MacDonald of Bryant and MacDonald Limited Wholesale Teas. The home was sold to Victoria May Schooler, who resided with her husband, Daniel Schooler, who was a shipbuilder and the superintendent of the Halifax shipyards. The home is particularly valued as an excellent example of its style, with a high level of heritage integrity as verified through review of the historic building plans. Here we have a model of the proposal as viewed from the front on St. Margaret's Bay Road. The DA proposal is as follows: the construction of 3 townhouses, construction of 1 duplex, the adaptive reuse of the existing detached garage as a backyard suite, the retention of the existing 2-unit heritage building, and an enclosed garage for each townhouse, as well as 5 total surface parking spaces for the other dwelling units. That includes 3 parking spaces fronting on St. Margaret's Bay Road and 2 fronting on Finch Lane. Here we can see a model of the proposal as viewed from the rear on Finch Lane, as well as an overhead view of in the site plan. And here we have elevations of the townhouses from all sides, and elevations of the existing detached garage having been adaptively reused, as well as a photo of how it looks today before this proposal. And here we have the duplex elevations, again from all sides. Lastly, we have the preliminary landscape plan to give an idea of the parking layout and surrounding landscaping. This proposal is being considered under Policy 6.8 of the Halifax MPS, which defers to Policy CH7A of the Regional Plan. which supports the retention and adaptive reuse of heritage properties and buildings by allowing their owners to apply for a development agreement for a development or use not otherwise permitted by the applicable land use bylaw, subject to certain considerations, including that the development maintains the heritage value of the property and does not demolish the registered heritage building, that the impact on adjacent uses should be minimized, the proposed level of investment in conservation should be proportional to the additional development rights being provided, and the proposal should be generally consistent with other policies in its secondary plan area, especially heritage policies. The surrounding community is a predominantly residential environment, zoned with a mix of R1, R2, R2P, and R3 properties, and building forms ranging from single-family homes to low-rise apartment buildings. The subject site has the potential to be subdivided and developed as of right to achieve the same or potentially greater density than proposed, and the proposed building heights remain below the as of right maximum height. The new construction proposed consists of an additional 6 units, including 3 townhouses, 1 over-under duplex, and 1 backyard suite, all of them being residential uses. This proposal is equivalent to or less than the as-of-right potential for the site, and this development agreement is being pursued primarily to unlock the townhouse built form, to more sensitively and effectively use the site, and to better respect the existing heritage by locating new development off to the side. The proposal has been reviewed by HRM Traffic Services, Parking Services, Fire Services, Land Development and Subdivision, Development Engineering, and Halifax Water, with reviewers identifying no anticipated issues regarding the impacts of this proposal. In response to public feedback, 3 new parking spaces have been relocated from Finch Lane to the shared driveway off of St. Margaret's Bay Road to further minimize the impact of traffic generation on the surrounding neighborhood. In terms of scale, this proposal is of a comparable scale to the heritage building and the neighboring dwellings. The site offers parking for all units and access to a transit priority corridor. The existing heritage building is in good, stable condition, and it will be retained unmodified, with its existing duplex use maintained. No substantial alterations application is required for this heritage development agreement, as there are no proposed substantial alterations for the character-defining elements of this heritage property. The surrounding landscape will be rehabilitated per the attached preliminary landscape plan and per the conditions laid out in the development agreement. And the historic front gate will be rehabilitated through repair or in-kind replacement, as well as the retention and repair of the original nameplate, as stipulated in the development agreement. This is considered a non-substantial alteration and does not require discretionary approval. A summary of public feedback is provided in Attachment C. 13 responses were received. Feedback was predominantly expressing concerns, and those concerns were primarily regarding traffic generation from proposed parking, which was initially on Finch Lane, and environmental impacts from the loss of trees. In response to this feedback, the applicant has relocated 3 parking spaces from Finch Lane to instead use the shared driveway fronting on St. Margaret's Bay Road. Staff have also added requirements to the development agreement based on this feedback, addressing the retention of trees and the use of buffer plantings and fencing to enhance privacy. More analysis is provided in the policy review in Attachment B, but staff find that the proposed development satisfies standards 1 through 12 of the Standards and Guidelines for the Conservation of Historic Places in Canada. Compatibility is achieved by taking design cues from the heritage building in its roof lines, its use of dormer windows, and its use of finely scaled cladding materials. Subordination is achieved through the modest scale and the positioning fully separate from the heritage building and off to the side, so as not to intrude on the sight lines between the heritage building and St. Margaret's Bay Road. Distinguishability is achieved through a distinctly modern design and physical separation. Other major considerations include that the character-defining element of the historic front gate will be repaired or replaced in kind with the nameplate repaired. All other character-defining elements which will remain unaffected by this proposal. The design and materiality choices enabling subordination to and compatibility with the heritage building also fulfill policy CH16 of the regional plan. Again, more analysis is provided in the policy review, but staff find that the proposed development is reasonably consistent with the intent of applicable policies, including applicable sections of the Halifax MPS policies 2 and 6, and policies CH5, CH7A, and CH16 of the regional plan. The proposed development represents infill residential development that will be supportive of and compatible with the heritage character of the subject site. The proposal is comparable in scale to the heritage building and the surrounding neighborhood. and the proposal is comparable in density to the as-of-right potential of the site, and the level of conservation effort for the site is proportionate. Thus, staff recommend that HAC recommend that Halifax and West Community Council approve the proposed development agreement. Currently, the application is at the HAC recommendation stage, and if HAC recommends in favor, it will proceed to first reading at Halifax and West Community Council and then to a public hearing. The recommendation is before you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for this motion?
Yep. I move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend that Halifax and West Community Council first give notice of motion to consider the proposed development agreement as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated July 18th, 2024, to enable the construction of 3 townhouse units, 1 duplex, and 1 backyard suite on the registered heritage property, and schedule a public hearing. The 2, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form asset as set out in attachment A of the staff report dated July 18, 2024. And 3, require that the development agreement be signed by the property owner within 120 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of final approval by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be beat and end.
Thank you, Tyler. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? And none so being, we'll move to the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None so being, motion carried. Next item is 9.1.3, request to include 5450 Russell Street in Halifax, the Registry of Heritage Properties for HRM. And Elizabeth will be doing it.
I had some difficulty trying to unmute my phone, and I did have one question on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
My only question was in regards to looking at the landscape plan. It looked like there was still opportunity for more density in the property, you know, over in the treat area off of Finch Lane at one end and maybe towards St. Margaret's Bay. So I was kind of curious, is there any latitude in the development agreement to allow for more density in the future for future constructions of possibly additional units? Because I see it seems like there is capacity on the property.
Certainly, I can speak to that through the chair to the councillor. So the development agreement does explicitly lay out what is permitted on the lands, and that is limited to the duplex, the 3 townhomes, the backyard suite, and the existing heritage duplex building. While there may be room for additional development in front of the building, the site is particularly challenging given the dramatic slope. And also, it was the intent of the applicant in this proposal to keep the entirety of the new construction off to the west of the heritage building to preserve the sight lines of the heritage building from St. Margaret's Bay Road in order to better respect its heritage value and to ensure that the proposal meets all applicable policies. I cannot confidently say that that introducing any additional density in front of the heritage building would necessarily fulfill all the same policies.
Okay, I can see the topography is quite steep there and stuff. You know, you can build houses on stilts these days and stuff. So I was just kind of curious down the road, could they subdivide the property off to the east side of the property and then look at different density? I wasn't sure, but I wasn't sure if that was being allowed in the development agreement or be restricted.
In this case, that would be restricted by the agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, since we've approved that motion, we'll move to back to 9.1.3 and back to Elizabeth for presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. All right. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Once again, my name is Elizabeth Cushing. I'm a heritage planner, and I'll be presenting the 5450 Russell Street Heritage Registration Request. The subject property is located on the block bound by Russell Street to the north, Godges Street to the west, Galley Lane to the south, and Vincent Street to the east. The property is being considered under the evaluation criteria for the registration of heritage buildings in Halifax Regional Municipality, which assesses a property based on the following criteria. So as usual, I will go through each criteria and findings and then I'll pause to allow HAC to discuss. The Halifax Board of School Commissioners, School Sites and Building Committee began exploring the idea of using the site at the corner of Russell and Godwin Streets for a new boys' school in February 1916, following a fire at Yonge Street School the month prior. The committee hired architect Walter Johannes Bush to design the school in April that same year. The school is first identified in the 1916 McAlpine City Directory, and a building is shown on the site by the 1918 assessment map. The subject property was built in 1916. As such, staff recommend a score of 9 for age.
Have to unmute there. Any discussion from the committee regarding that number?
I agree with 9.
9 is good. Anyone else?
Yes, 9.
Okay. No one seems opposed. We'll go forward with 9.
Great, thank you. The subject property has historical associations with Halifax's public educational school system reform of the mid-19th to early 20th century and the Halifax explosion. The middle class began advocating for large formalized school systems at the turn of the century in an effort to promote economic development and prevent social disorder. Previously, schools had been mostly located around the Grand Parade and were operated by religious and philanthropic organizations or were small exclusive academies. The Education Act was passed in 1864, which made schools free and open to all children. And in 1888, the Compulsory of Education Act was passed, which required every boy and girl living in Halifax between the ages of 8 and 14 to attend school during regular hours. So in tandem with Halifax's population growth, the Act necessitated the construction of several new schools in Halifax, and 5450 Russell Street is one of the few remaining examples. The school was also quickly established by the Halifax Relief Commission and Board of School Commissioners as temporary living quarters for reconstruction workers following the devastation of the Halifax explosion. A temporary shack was constructed behind the school, which was initially used as a dining hall for the reconstruction workers and was later used as a classroom for the neighboring schools, which were destroyed in the explosion, namely Richmond School and St. Joseph's Boys and Girls Schools. The school was named after Alexander Mackay, who served as the supervisor of Halifax Public Schools from 1883 to 1916. However, due to Mackay's support for racial segregation of Halifax's schools during his tenure, staff included his biography in the research report to inform the full history of the school. But staff recommend that the historical associations with Mackay not be considered as contributing to the historic value of the property, and the inscription stone with his name on it is not considered a character-defining element. The subject property has local historical importance based on its representation of Halifax's public education system and the role the school played during the Halifax explosion. Staff recommend a score of 11 to 15.
Thank you. So we have a range of 11 to 15 recommendation. Any numbers coming to people's minds?
Right off the bat, I'm going to say 15. I really believe that this is important historical. While it says moderately important, I feel we should go to the top of the scale.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
That assessment.
I feel it's high as well, though I'm kind of biased because I'm a former school principal. And you kind of have an attachment to these old buildings. I would tend to go with the high end of that for 15. Anyone else?
I'm fine with 15.
Okay, thank you, David. Any other input?
I tend to agree with 15.
Okay. Yeah, it certainly has a heritage and a history in the city. Okay, if no one's opposed, we will go with 15 on this item.
Perfect, thank you. The subject property was designed by architect Walter Bush. Walter trained under his father, Henry F. Bush, and worked as an assistant in his office. Walter continued the family business after his father's death in 1902 and specialized in educational building design. He designed 10 Halifax schools, including St. Patrick's Girls High School, Chebucto Road Public School, Tower Road School, and Bloomfield School. Chebucto Road and Tower Road schools are both municipally registered heritage properties. The contractors were Falconer and McDonald, who also specialized in institutional buildings, and they constructed buildings for Dalhousie University. So as a well-known local architect and well-known local builders, staff recommend a score of 1 to 3.
Do we have any input on this?
I say 3.
Me too.
I agree.
I
Good.
also agree.
3.
Deep ties in the city, Dal, and the buildings. We will go with 3 then. That seems to be unanimous.
Great, thank you. In terms of the construction type, the subject property is concrete framing clad in brick with a granite block and rubble stone foundation. The brick cladding has since been parged with stucco. There are relatively few brick buildings within the surrounding area, 5450 Russell Street, of this era. And although the brick has been parged with stucco, this modification could be reversed in the future. So as a moderately rare example, the concrete framed brick building, staff recommend a score of 4 to 6.
And again, how do people feel?
I say a high end 6 because even the size of the building is quite a stone structure.
We have 1 6. Anyone else?
6.
6 is fine.
Yeah, 6 is fine with me. So if no one's opposed, we'll go with a 6 on that.
Great, thank you. The institutional building at 5450 Russell Street was constructed in the Edwardian Classicism style, which was popular in Canada from 1900 to 1930. Edwardian Classicism is characterized by its balanced facades, simplified but large roof lines, smooth brick surfaces, and generous fenestration. Short colonnettes and brick piers emphasize entryways, and classical elements such as large plain stone lintels with keystones surround windows. Character-defining elements include, but are not limited to, the 2.5-story Edwardian Classicism style institutional building with a rectangular long facade, central bay at the north elevation topped by parapet and segmental arch inscription stone reading AD 1916, and granite string courses and lug sills. So as a moderately rare example of an Edwardian Classicism style institutional building, staff recommend a score of 4 to 6.
And what numbers are people comfortable with?
I'm happy with the 6. Just again, the size of the building and looking at the original blueprint drawings, and most of it's still, in my opinion, virtually intact except for under the stucco. But I think it's an incredible piece of workmanship.
There's not many like it. There was one very much like it in Amherst, and they tore it down to make a park, a ghost and all. So I would go with a 6.
6 is good with me as well.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, we will go forward with 6 if no one's opposed.
Great, thank you. The institutional building has a moderate level of integrity. Some of the modifications include the red brick parged with stucco, the rear addition constructed circa 1958, changes to the transom above the north elevation entrance, replacement of windows, removal of the decorative cornice with brackets, and of the voussoirs with keystones. School's seen significant modifications to the exterior, although the form, massing, and openings are largely the same, so staff recommend a score of 1 to 5.
Numbers do people have? I find it's kept the look, over a century, even though there have been some changes. And I personally lean towards a 4 or a 5.
Yeah, I'll happy with the 4. The stucco and stuff covering it, the changing of the overhead there on the side door. It's a little disappointing, but looking at the original drawings, the rest of the building is virtually intact except for the stucco.
Anyone else?
With the major changes to the entryways and the windows, I would lean more toward a 3.
Okay. Any other input? How comfortable are we as a group with 3?
I'll be fine with that.
3 is
I
fine.
would. Yeah, I would.
I'll go with 3.
Okay, we'll go forward with 3. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The institutional building has physical, historical, and visual relationships with the surrounding area. It serves as a landmark as one of the few historic masonry buildings in the area and is surrounded by institutional uses in an otherwise predominantly residential area. The school also has associations with St. Mark's Church as another Walter Bush designed masonry institutional building of a similar era, and St. Mark's Church is also municipally registered. For its physical, historical, and visual relationships with the surrounding area, staff recommend a score of 6 to 10.
And who has a number in mind?
I'm leaning towards 10 because I think it's really notable when you drive or walk through the area, and I think it really adds to the character of the neighborhood.
Good
I
point.
was thinking more towards an 8 because I said this is post explosion. If it was there to survive the explosion, I'd give it a much higher score. But this is kind of the what's been built from the unification of the area and stuff.
Yeah, the rebuild, yeah.
Yeah. So I give it significant history for that. So at least an 8, I would give it.
Sorry, Councillor Elizabeth. Just for clarity, this building was constructed in 1916. Is that correct? Before the explosion, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. I'm looking at the picture. It looks like 1919. I guess I need to blow it up a bit more. Okay, 1916. I see it now. Well, in that case, I'd give it a higher score because it did survive the explosion.
So a 9?
I'm happy with a 10.
You're happy with a 10? If we go with the 10, is anyone opposed? So being, we'll go with the 10. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I didn't add the recommendation slide. My apologies.
I think the score is 52.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll put the motion in the chat.
Thank you, Simon.
Do we have a mover? Well, chat's not up yet. There it is.
I'll move that the Heritage Advisory Committee recommend Regional Council 1 to set a date for Heritage hearing to consider the inclusion of the subject property in the Registry of Heritage Properties for the Halifax Municipality, and 2, approve the request to include 5450 Russell Street, Halifax, in the Registry of Heritage Properties for the Halifax Municipality, as shown in map 1 of the staff report dated August 22nd, 2024, as the municipal heritage building under the Heritage Property Act.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Second, thank you. Any debate on the motion? None so being, I'll call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, 9.2, there are no member updates, no added items. I have the date on my notes for the next meeting of July 24th, but I think that's wrong. So it's
I apologize. That is probably
That's
an
okay.
oversight on my part.
I just read it. So when is the next date, Simon?
Thank you, Chair. I believe that we do have if required, meeting scheduled for October at the moment. Just
Okay.
jumping ahead to see if I've got my notes on that. Yep, for
8th.
October 8th.
8th, yeah, I just saw it on my phone. Okay.
Yeah.
So October the 8th, 2024. Thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Simon.